Okay, so as I said that previously we looked at if statements, and now I want to show you something small that can work within if statements, okay? And that is what we call the truthy and the falsy, okay? So do not confuse this for true and false, okay? Do not confuse it for true and false. It is truthy and falsy. So I want to show you what truthy means and what a falsy really
Josh,
Yes, hello.
your screen, I don't know if it's on my side, but your screen appears abnormally small.
I've really shared my entire screen. Is it the problem with everyone?
No, mine is okay.
Mine is okay too.
Okay, so I think
maybe the font size.
As if you've not like finished the entire screen upwards. I can't get why it appears smaller than normal, but okay, we shall bear with that. Maybe perhaps with the font size as well, you could check.
I'm really sharing it the normal way that I usually share it. So
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know what you're saying, but so okay. So I'm saying that truthy and falsy just literally translates to. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So truthy and falsy, as I'm saying that in Python, so the truthy and falsy are just refer to how values are interpreted in a Boolean concept, okay, such as an if statement. So, and I'm saying don't confuse it for true and false. We already saw true and false, okay. So what I'm just going to show you here is something that you might encounter. So let us say we are dealing with a voter registration system, okay. Maybe we voter registration system, and in this system we want to maybe ensure that the voter, first of all, is old, okay. He should be old enough in this system, and then you should be registered, okay, to maybe registered to maybe to vote, okay. So let us just have two variables, one which is old, okay, is old. Let's set it to true because we want our person to be old enough, and we say is registered. We set it to true also, to true. And when we come, let's check. We want to check if is old, okay, and is registered, okay, registered. So we want our system to check if you're old and registered. So you print you are old enough and you are licensed. You are registered. Registered. Okay. Else print. Let's say maybe you are not eligible to vote, right? So if we run this system, for example, if we run our system here, we are going to get you are old enough and you're registered, because we see that true is old is true and is registered is also true. But if this is false, of course, we are going to get the the code under the else, you're not eligible to vote since the is registered is false. Yet here this statement is checking if both of them are true. So let's turn back this to true. And now let's see what happens if I say, what if in this part I had hello? Okay, so if I have hello and I run this cell, you see that I actually get you are old enough and you are registered. But in actual sense, what we have here is a string, and it's not a Boolean as we had initially. We had true, and our code made sense. But now, if I have I get a result which shows that both of these statements are true. If I remove this, however, I remain with an empty string, I receive you are not eligible to vote. So what is happening? What is actually happening is this. So let me put back my I into to this here. Of course, I get that, but let me print. Let me check something. I say print bool is old. I get true. Okay. If I say, for example, let me make this an empty list. If I say print, I'm checking for the data type. I'm typecasting here. I'm converting this into a Boolean. So if I say bool is registered, and I print that out, I get, let me run this, run that, and let me also run that. So I get false. So this is, in Python, is what we refer to as truthy and falsy. So a truthy value evaluates to true when converted to a Boolean. A falsy value evaluates to false when converted to a Boolean. So let me get...
Josh, kindly pardon that.
I'm saying
a truthy value.
A value that we call truthy, okay? Truthy, not true, okay? I'm saying truthy. A value that we call truthy, like for example, we see is old, is a string with high, okay? Evaluates to true when we convert it to a Boolean. And that is what Python is doing here. It is saying that since you didn't provide me with true or false here, let me convert these values into a Boolean context and run that code. So what is happening is that Python is converting all these things under the hood. It is basically doing this, okay? It is also here. It is doing what we have done here. It is changing that value into a Boolean. Now, we have so many values that would evaluate to truthy and to falsy. So truthy values are these ones, okay? I don't want you to run them. So truthy values are what we call, some of them are non-empty strings. Non-empty strings. So for example, we saw this high, it gave us a true, all right? Non-empty strings. We have non-zero numbers, okay? Okay, so let us, before we even go this side, let us try to check with different values. So for example, let me put here a 0. And let me also say here 0. And if I run this, I'm told you are eligible to vote. Sorry, you are not eligible to vote. So these are none. This is a 0. This is a 0 number. But if I say this is 6 and this is 5, if I run that, I'm told you are old enough and you are registered. So Python is saying that both of these values evaluate to true in a Boolean context. Okay. So if let's put an empty list here, and also maybe an empty set. If we run that, we are told you are not eligible to vote. So, but let's put items in this set, 1, 2, 3, and let's put items also in this. This is the list, okay? You are old enough and you are registered. So Python is telling me that this list is evaluating to true, and also this list is evaluating to true. So that is what we refer to as truthy, the truthy value. But if it was empty, as we saw, it becomes a falsy value. So non-zero numbers, like we saw 5 and 6 evaluated to true, they are truthy values. So non-zero numbers, non-empty lists, dictionaries, and also sets, also tuples. So we have so many values that evaluate to true, and falsy. We have 0, 0, 0, the 0 that we know. That's from my keyboard. Falsy values. We have the 0. We have empty lists. Okay. We have empty lists, empty sets, empty tuples, you know. Okay, so objects that are using my God, I like this. It's paralyzed. So okay, so the none type also returns. We saw none in some classes. We saw what none evaluates to. So let's try to look at truthy and falsy values. Right. We get so many. For example, let me go to the website of Bootcamp. We see something like truthy values. Where they? So we see falsy values. These are empty lists, empty tuples, empty dictionaries, empty sets, empty strings, empty ranges. Yeah, there's 0 of any numeric type. Okay, so we have lots of data types that would evaluate to falsy and truthy. So that is something that I wanted to show you. What I wanted to show you, that in case you landed upon something like that, do not worry. So let us come to today's class, which is loops. Okay, so loops are basically these. When we are dealing with an iterable, okay, in loops we are dealing with iteration. So with iteration, we are dealing with iterables. An iterable in Python is an object that basically that is capable of returning elements one at a time. Okay, so it's an object that is capable of returning an element, one at a time. Okay, so when we are dealing with loops, we are basically dealing with iterables. And then what you need to know about loops is we are writing code, we are telling the computer to perform a certain function, or to run a certain piece of code over and over again. Okay, so in loops, we have two types of loops. We have what they call a for loop, and we also have, oh, sorry, I ran that cell instead. And we have a while loop. Okay, so we are going to see what each of these are. Oh, I have. Let me just make these comments actually. Good. Down and comment, code, comment. So let's start with what they call for loop. Okay. So a for loop, we basically use a keyword for. Okay. So, and this is how we write a for loop. So for, okay, as we see in the name, and then we have a variable. Okay. We define a variable there and then. Okay. So for variable, it could be anything. So for variable in whichever object we want to iterate over, okay, then basically print, no, not basically printing, but you are trying to run the code there and then depending on what we have here. So let me comment that, but that is the structure. Now let me say we have for letter maybe in the word Python. Okay, so for letter in the word Python, note that letter is just a variable. Okay, it's not a special keyword, but for and in are special keywords. So for letter in Python, let's print letter. Okay, so what happens is that we get Python split into different letters. So we have P, we have Y, T. So it comes, what is happening here is that it comes and checks for letter in Python, print letter. So it's going to come and first grab this first letter, print it out as we see here, then come back, selects the next letter, prints it out, then it comes back, gets the T, prints it out, like that, until all those letters are basically done. And this is what we call an iterable. An iterable in Python, we say, is an object that is capable of returning an element one at a time. So what examples of iterables? Yes.
The word letter and Python, how comes it's able to what? To run it without you assigning Python to the word letter?
Without assigning, yes. So the structure is here, okay? So we can define a variable right there and then here, and Python will not complain. So this thing can become anything. It can become, I can say maybe for I, as you'll see in many tutorials, they will use words like I, J, K. So I don't know why, but we can say for I, it will still do the same thing. So I can say for maybe let, I can say interpolate. So it is basically a variable that we are trying to print out, and we define it there and then within the for loop. But we have different iterables. We can have sets, we can have dictionaries, we can have lists. Okay, so all these are what we call iterables, and we can iterate over these. They can basically try to return all elements that are within that list. So for example, let me say for maybe item in, I can define a list 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if I say that, I can print out item, and you already guessed it. If I print it out, it's going to return all the elements within the list. Or we can even say someone is annotating. Oh God. Oh Jesus Christ. Whoever is annotated, can you kindly remove those annotations? So we can say my list 2. My list is, we can define this thing here up, so we can have code that is maintainable and is readable. So instead we can say for item in now, I get this variable that I described, this set that I put here. Okay? And if I ring, it would still give me the same thing. So what we are basically doing is we are saying that for item in this list that we have declared up here, print the item. So it comes and gets the first item in that list, prints it out, returns, prints the second item in that list, comes, gets the third item, prints it out until the list is complete. So we can also even look over.
Joshua.
Yes.
Now on that list that you have assigned to the variable name, my list.
Yes.
This way in the for loop, I'm saying you're saying for item in my list. So I'm looking at what my list as a what? A variable name that has an object.
Yes.
Please help me on that.
So remember the structure that we said.
Yes.
For variable in whichever object we are trying to define. Okay. And then you have the code. Like I'm saying, I want to check for this and then run the code. That as long as this condition is satisfied, run that code. So now it's the same thing that we have. I think what is confusing you is because we have item and we have my list, but we are saying you're not seeing item defined anywhere. Isn't that where the confusion is coming from?
No.
Yes.
I'm looking at my list as a variable name. A variable.
Yes.
That's why I'm not seeing it. I'm not looking at in that. I'm not looking at it as a what? An object.
Oh, you're not looking at it as an object. Okay. So we said that Python is an object-oriented programming language, and everything in Python is treated as an object. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes.
Everything is treated as an object, whether it's a list, whether it's a string, whether it's a what. So it is an object. So
all right.
Yes. So we are saying that all these in here, this list here is an object, and that's why we have its variable name here. So now let us see, can we really also return items that are within a tuple? So for item, maybe I can use a different variable. I can say for number in, remember our tuples, they are defined with those brackets, okay? So for 5, Python is a very, it is very sensitive with indentation. So make sure that you indent your code properly. So for number in that, let's try to print out number. It of course does that as we guessed. And let's try to, if you push this side, we're going to get an error, that indentation error, because we do not have any code under the for. So make sure that you have the code under the for loop for it to run. All right. So we have looked. We can also look over. Let me just copy this same code here, but I convert this into a list. Sorry, a set. So if I do that again, you see that I can loop over a set. Now, can we also loop over dictionaries? I think we can. So let's loop over a dictionary here. Looping over a dictionary. So let's say maybe we have a small dictionary. Let's call it dict. So let's define it properly here. Let's just get, let's not make it so big. Let's just get a one. And so we have name is Jenny. So we say this is a key and value pair, right? So let's say for item in dict, okay? Let's print out item, see what basically happens. You see that when we print out these when you say for item in dict, it prints out the key, but it does not print out the value, right? So how do we, what if we want actually the keys only, or what if we want only values, or what if we actually want to return this whole pair? So let's try to make it a little bit bigger. So maybe name is Jenny. Let's say age is 60. Let's say maybe can swim. Okay. Can swim. We say maybe, yeah, she actually can swim. Okay. So for item in dict, if we print out that, we return all the keys. Okay. But if we want to return the values, so I say for item, but you see when you do not specify, let's change this. Maybe this is a user, storing a user profile. Okay, so item in user, and we say maybe print item. So if you want to return, if you do not specify what you want to return, if you just say for variable in that object, it's going to return for you keys. But if you say for item in, okay, for example, user dot keys, okay, if you leave that specific and you print out item, okay, it is again going to print for you the keys because you have specified. But what if we want to return the values? So say for item in user dot values, okay, values print, let's print out item. Now when you do that and you check, it has returned our values. Okay, so to prevent confusion, let's comment this code out and check this. So you have Jenny, we have 60, we have true. But what if we want to return the whole key and value pair? So here it's the syntax changes a little bit, that I would just come and say, oh, now I can be very elaborate. I say key, comma, value, all right, in user dot items. This is also a method that is associated with dictionaries. Okay, and now let's print out these two things that we want. We want to print out the key and the value. And you see that what happens if we print them out, we get we get them together. Okay, so key for key and value, okay, comma, in user dot items, print key and value. So we get name, Jenny, age 60, can swim is true, just like how we are able to have them. Now let's try to loop over an integer. Let's say, for example, we have age is equal to, maybe let's say I have 677 years. Let's try to, just for fun. So for number, maybe, let me just maybe for number is just, that is just a variable name. It means nothing. We're just defining a variable. It's not special in any way. I say for number in age, let's print out number and try to run that. Okay, so we get an error. It is telling us that this is a type error, that int object is not iterable. Literally, so we cannot return these digits, just like how we are looking at returning each item in here, just like how we're looking at returning each item within a tuple, within a set, within a list, and also within a string. So an integer is not iterable. So do not try to iterate over. Do not try to iterate over an integer. All right. So I want to introduce a small keyword that we will see most often, and this keyword is called a range. Okay, let's call it a range object.
Josh,
yes.
Just for clarification, I think maybe to iterate an integer, you don't define it.
Pardon?
For like to iterate an integer, I think you don't define it. For example, can't you just say for item in 6, print item? Won't it bring like from 0 to 5, is it? I don't know.
So, so now integers themselves aren't iterable, okay? But what we can do is, if you want to iterate over an integer, you can maybe first convert it to a string first, and then you can return all the items. Or, for example, if you want to, we can say that now let me first. So we can say age is that, okay? And then we try to say that if number in, we first convert it to string, okay? And then we shall be able to iterate over it. But an integer itself is not iterable. Are we
okay?
Are we getting
yeah,
the
together?
Yes.
We're together.
Or if you do not want to convert it to a string, you can convert it using, you can basically output it using arithmetic, but let us not try to go there. All we need to know is an integer. You will not be able to iterate over an integer if you do not try to use the corners. So I want to introduce what we call the range keyword. And this range keyword basically prints out ranges. It's a range object itself, okay? So for example, if I say print out a range from 0 to 20. Okay, so it returns a what? It returns a range object. It tells me that yes, you told me print range 0 to 20. I've printed for you 0 to 20. But what if we actually want to print out numbers from 0 to actually 20. So I'll have to get the same code, but now I say that I want you to print out a list, okay? A list of items in that range, and then we shall get items within that range. So let us try to iterate using a range object. So for example, I can say a number in range. Okay, so a number in range 1 to 10, print out number. Okay, so it will return all items from 1 to 10. Of course, it skips the 10. Okay, so it returns all items between in the range of 1 to 10. So otherwise, let's see where would we basically try to use something like a for loop, and what would we use? Why even use a for loop? Okay, so we have seen whenever you try to sign up for a service, you are maybe forgotten your password, you have forgotten, maybe you're trying to be a new user to a system. We have seen what we call OTP passwords. Okay, so these OTP codes, okay, one-time passwords. Actually, it's not OTP password, just OTP, okay, because it's a one-time password. So let's try to see one thing that we had not yet seen. We had not yet seen that we can actually import modules, okay? So let's try to import the random module. What does the random, what am I even doing here? What I'm doing is, from the Python library, I have a module named random. And what does random do? It helps me generate random items. Now, of course, this is very useful if we are dealing with things like OTPs, because they are always randomly generated. You don't want someone to guess what the OTP will be. So let's say, for example, 4, okay? Now we want, let me, you see what I've done there? I've used an underscore instead of a variable, and I'm going to explain why. But let's say if, for example, in range, okay, example in range 5, okay, and let's first write our code, trans, then I'll explain what I'm doing. So I need my OTP to be random dot run int. Okay, so random dot run int, and I want maybe all the OTPs to start from 100, maybe 1,000 to 99999. Are those okay? Yeah, so they are now 6 figures. These are also 6 figures. Okay, so we want our OTP to be generated using the random library, but we want to call that method randint, but we want from numbers starting from 100,000 to 9999999. Okay, so let's print out. Let's print out OTP. We want we learned about string concatenation. Okay, so I can just put my string there, and then I return the OTP that I have defined here. So what happens if I run? If I run, oh, sorry. So for dash in range 5, OTP is equal to random dot rand int. We want 9999. Yes. OTP. Oh, yeah, it's here. So why? OTP, and then we need the comma that. Okay, so let's put that there. So we see when we try to run this, we get randomly generated figures. If we run it again, we get the other randomly generated figures. If we try to run it again, we get randomly generated figures. So what is even happening here? So what is happening is we are saying that import random, okay? So import random. So when we import random, we had already said that we are basically importing a module called random from the Python library. Okay, so this random module contains functions that will generate random numbers. Now, of course, we're using it to generate OTPs. Now we have for this dash in range 5. Okay, so this is a loop that we want to run 5 times. Now, why am I using an underscore instead of what we were seeing, for example, in item? Okay, so you see, of course, it won't affect the way the loop runs. It will still run even if I said item. But why am I using an underscore here? The reason is simple that
Josh,
I want. Yes.
Could you kindly help me with this error that I'm getting here? Can I share on the group and you help me?
Share on the group and we see what the issue is. Okay. So are you the one who is Flavian? So import random 4, or use space, you put a space between the 4 and the in. Put a space. I'm seeing there like this. Make sure that they are spaced. Okay. Make sure they are spaced and your code will run. I can't hear you. I can't. This, you see your code that the screenshot I'm seeing in the group has something like this. So make sure you this underscore is a placeholder variable. Okay, it's a placeholder variable. It is used when we do not need to actually store that variable. So let me see. OTP is go to that is the problem. Attribute error module. Oh, you have put randit instead of randint. You see, our word has an N here. It is random integer, basically. We want a random integer. So random int.
Sure, got it. Got it. Thank you.
Yes, yes. So that is
so Josh.
Yes.
So it means that the OTPs you have generated are completely different from the ones I've generated and everybody else.
Everyone else. They will all be
so if you run this code again, you'd get different OTPs.
You run it again and see. So you constantly get different OTPs. And our function is running, our loop is running 5 times. So the underscore here, as I was trying to explain the underscore, it is a placeholder variable. Usually we use it most of the times when the loop variable isn't actually needed, because we just need that to generate that OTP. We do not need to store it. So I just use that, but you can also you can just say maybe for value that, and you'll be fine. It won't have any issue. So this random.randint is basically just generates random integers between this figure and that figure. Okay, so we're generating 6-digit numbers, as you see here, between 100,000 and 999,999. So then we have this. We are trying to print out the OTP. Okay, down here, we're saying one-time password is this, one-time password is this. But if we change this to 3, we see that our loop will run 3 times. Are we together? So we have seen, I think it makes more sense when you see where you actually might use some of this code. Now, with that, let me run over to what we call while loops, and I'm going to explain where you would need a while loop and where you would basically need a for loop. So let me get that as a markdown. Now, while loops are basically also like for loops, but they are telling, of course, that you want to run a certain piece of code over and over again. But the difference is that in the while loop, first of all, we have what they call an initializer, okay? We have an initializer, or in some cases, you might not use it, as we shall see. And then you have a while, okay? The word while. Now, while, then we have a condition, okay? Condition. Now, we are saying that while the condition is true, okay, you want to run a certain piece of code as long as the condition is true. So with the while loop, we want to run the condition, we want to run the loop until the condition becomes false. For example, let me show you, let me try to run it. Let me try to use W3 schools, because I don't want all of you to be caught in. Don't try to run this in your Jupyter, okay? Because you'll disturb the kernel, and then you'll have to restart. You need to restart your kernel, okay? So, for example, let me write a while loop here. I say, for example, I define a variable I. We said we have an initializer. So I is equal to, for example, 0. And when I have I is equal to 0, I say that while I, for example, is less than 10. Okay. So what do I want? I want to print I. So you see already that I is 0. And I'm saying that while I is less than 10, print I. So what I'm telling Python is that I want you to print I as long as I is less than 10. So if you run this piece of code here, let's try to run it and you see what happens. So I get 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and these zeros are unending, okay? This is what we call an infinite loop. It will run until that your computer runs out of resources. That loop will run forever. It will never stop. But let's see what happens. I didn't want to run this in Jupyter because it will disturb our code. But let's try to see what would happen if, for example, we wanted to actually maybe stop I. What we can do alternatively is we can say print I and then increment I. How do we increment I? We can say I is equal to I plus 1. Okay? So what would happen is it's going to come, it's going to say while I is less than 10, print I. So initially we are saying that I is 0. Okay? So in the first step, we are saying that I is equal to 0. So it is going to come and run this loop. It's going to print out our I. Then it's going to come onto the second line that get the current value of I and add 1 to it. All right? Add 1 to it. So it's going to come back. What is the current value of I? It is still 0. Is I still less than 10? Yes. So print I. But you see, we had this condition which was saying that I is equal to I plus 1. So when it comes to this line, it is already going to get this value of I and add 1 to it. So now I at this level becomes 1. It runs again and says, while I is less than 10, is 1 less than 10? Yes, print I. It's going to print it out. Then get that same value, which is now 1, okay? Which is now 1, and then add another 1, it becomes a 2 until the loop is satisfied and until we get to a false value where I is no longer less than 10. So for example, if we get to 9, okay? So if we get to I is equal to 9, we shall come, run the loop, say that while I is less than 10, yes, it's true, 9 is less than 10, print out I. It comes and prints out I, but when it comes and adds again a 1 to that 9, which becomes 10, comes back and checks, is 10 now less than 10? It says no. So the loop stops there. So if we try to run this, that while I is, why do I have an indent? I is equal to I plus 1. Why am I having that? Indent does not match that. What is happening here? So we have while I is less than 10. So we have print I. It's just an indentation error. I copied that code from the W3 schools. So I is equal to I plus 1. Okay, so the indentation is corrected, and now we run our code. So we see that we have up to 9, like we had predicted, that we have this loop running until the condition becomes false. Okay, so while I is still less than 10, so literally while I is still true, less than 10, run that code and increment until it becomes no longer less than 10. Okay, so now let's see something here that we can, or if I remove this, let me just copy this down here so that we can have this code up for reference. Let me try to show you what we have what they call a break statement. So a break statement literally says that if I remove this, I can just say break. Okay, so if I break that, I'm trying to break the loop. You see the loop initially when you run this code without the break statement here, without where did that code go? I don't know. But if we remove this break statement, we're going to be trapped in an infinite loop, and our computer will have to run out of resources. So if we do not, if we want to basically run that loop and stop it there, we use what they call the break statement. So the break statement is just basically the keyword that is used to break out of the loop. Now, let me show you that we can actually use an else statement in a while loop. So in a while loop, okay, we saw an else statement within if statements. Okay, so let me try to say if I is less than 10, print I, but we want you to increment I. So the other shorthand, by the way, of saying I is equal to I plus 1 is basically saying I plus equal to 1. Okay, so we shall run that loop until we get to 9. So this is a shorthand of saying I is equal to I plus 1. And as you continue, you'll find that this is, it looks better than saying I is equal to I plus 1. So this is a shorthand, okay, of this, right? And it is usually better. So now let me first put an else statement. I can say else, okay, that while I is that, we saw that it has run up to 9. So what should happen after counting? You print out maybe done counting. So if we get something like that, when the loop ends, okay, we get an I'm done counting at the end. But now, what happens if we say, I want you to note what happens if I say break here. if I say break here, if I say break, that at this point, we're breaking out of the loop before we get to this line. So if I say break, you see what happens? The break keyword stops the loop from continuing. So we are saying that while I is less than 10, but we are saying I is equal to 0, while I is less than 10, yes, print I, which is the 0 that we get, and then increment I, and then break. So the incremented value does not get to be printed because we have broken the loop before we actually go back up, okay? So, and then also we break out of the loop before we get to this else statement. It's not an everyday thing that you'll see an else statement in a while loop, but I wanted to show you that you can actually put an else statement in a while loop, all right? So now someone might be like, yes.
I have a question. Earlier, I was trying to run some of these statements, the loop, the while loop, else, break, blah blah blah, and when I would run the code, it would return an empty, the code would be empty. And then I would close that notebook, start another notebook, then at a certain point, it would just keep returning an empty box. What could cause that?
So I would need to look at that code before I make the conclusion. I need to have to look at that code which you are talking about. So if you don't mind, you can share it within the group, and we can brainstorm and see what was wrong with your code at that moment. Okay.
Okay.
So
okay.
Yes.
Besides the structure view of the while loop, what's the difference between the while and the for loop?
Yes, and that is where I was basically going. That's where I was basically going, that why do you even need the while? Why don't we have one loop? Why don't we have just a for loop and we are done? Okay, why do we need both? Okay, so let me try to show you, maybe I can say this is while loop. Okay, we have already seen a for loop. Okay, so why do we need a while loop? Now, as we said, that a while loop will run until a condition becomes false, okay? So we use a while loop to run code a number of times that are unknown, okay? So we see here, when we are dealing with a for loop, we defined, we wanted it to run 3 times, okay? Here, we wanted it to print out numbers within a specified range that we gave it. We saw that we wanted it to loop over a dictionary that was already known. We were saying that we want you to loop over a list that we already know. So we know how many times this loop is going to run. It's going to run 5 times, no more, okay? If this loop runs 20 times when it is like this, then you have to check your code. That we already know the number of times this loop is going to run, but when we're dealing with a while loop, we do not know the number of times that the code is actually going to run. So, for example, let us see something. If we have, for example, my list, okay? Let's say it is 1, 2, 3. List 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so it's such a simple list. We can, let's use let's use a for loop to run over. So we say for item in my list, let's print the item. All right, so we had already seen what will happen? Our loop is going to run 3 times. It's going to print out our code, okay? But we can actually generate the same output with what? With a for loop, okay? So we already have my list defined. Let us say we have our initializer that I is equal to 0, and while I, okay? So I'm basically writing the same code, but using a while loop. So while I is less than the length, okay, than the length of that list, the length of my list, okay. So as long as it is less than the length of my list, let's print out my list at the index of I, okay. And now, not to be trapped in a boot loop, let's add our incrementer. So plus equal to 1, okay, and we run. So we see that we get the same output. So when I is 0, okay, when I is 0, it prints out, for example, initially we said I is 0. When I is 0, it prints out my list at the index of 0. So which is, what is the index of 0? Let me get this list, let me put it closer so that you do not have to look very far. So what is that? The index of 0, it is 1. So we print out 1. It comes and increments. Now it becomes 2. Now while I, which is 2 now, is less than the length of my list. What is the length of my list? It is 3. There are 3 items that we see. As long as it is less than the length of my list, print out my list at that index. My list at the index of I, which is now at this point 2. Which is 1, because we added 1 plus 0 to get 1. So at the index now 1, it prints out 2 and continues the same loop. But now let me try to show you. Oh, what have I done? Missing parenthesis to call the print here. I deleted this. Oh no, this is supposed to be commented. So now when, for example, let's write a small password checker. Okay? Let's write a small password checker. So we all know that whenever you go to use a system, you put in a password that is wrong, the system is going to tell you, no, wrong password. Until you put in the right password, and then you are given access. So for example, let's say we have our initializer that initially password is equal to an empty string, okay? Because whenever you're going to put in a password in a system, the password is empty. You are supposed to put in the value to be checked against the stored value somewhere within the system. So now let's say now that while password, okay, while password, okay, does someone remember what this means? Flavia, I think. Let me call upon Flavia. Flavia, what do you think is that operator means?
Not equal.
So this is the not equal to.
Equal to.
Yes. So now we want the password, while the password is not equal to admin 123, maybe that is our stored password. If the password is not equal to that, okay, I want you to tell the user, okay, we looked at an input function in the previous class. So tell the user to please enter please enter password. Okay. So that as long as this password, as long as what the user inputs is not this, continue telling the user to enter the password. Now, after they are done, if the password now you see where I have put the print statement. So if I do this and I run, okay, if I run this, they're going to tell me enter password. I'll put in a random password. It's going to tell me, please enter password. I put in a random password. But now I'm tired. Maybe I've remembered my password. I say admin123, and then it tells me access is granted. Now, what is happening is that the general rule for using a while loop is you want to run something, you want to run a piece of code for a number of times that are unknown. So you can never guess how many times someone is going to put in a wrong password. Okay, so but you can set the system to say that maybe after 30 tries you lock the system. Okay, but a general use of the while loop is make sure you run that code until you do not have a number of times that are unknown. So you want to post, but with for loop, you run it with a number of times that are already known. So now it's basically this, that while true, okay, while the condition is basically true, okay, this is the general rule that you are basically checking true until you're running the statement until it becomes false. So I say greeting is equal to, maybe we want to greet the system. I can say input maybe greet me. Okay. Greet me. Okay. Let me do something like that. And now when I can then combine it with an if statement.
Joshua.
Yes.
When I enter whatever a random password, it keeps granting me access. Where could I have? Let me send a screenshot and maybe you tell me where I could have made an error. Because I'm entering the wrong password and it gives me an answer. It gives me access granted.
So what happens here? That I put in a wrong password and I print. It tells me access granted because this line of code is right below this. This is where indentation comes in. So you look at your indent properly. Okay, look at your indent properly. That if you put it immediately below the password, it's going to run. It's going to come tell the user to input the password. Whichever password they have put, it's going to tell them print access granted because you're telling the system that this piece of code is below here. But if you put it outside the loop, okay? So, sorry, let me first run something here. So if you put it outside the loop, outside here, you are going to break outside. You're not going to basically, this is the piece of code that is bringing, that is constantly giving you access.
Yeah.
Let me see, access. Run that, let's see, password is empty while password is not equal to admin123. Password is equal to input. Please enter password. Correct. Runs out of the loop. Access granted. Why do you get access granted? Because it doesn't make sense. It does not make sense because it is the same code that I have here. Now I
actually see the same thing with you because you enter a password.
No, this
tells you access granted.
It's because I've tried to play around with it. I first put it here, and then now I'm trapped in a boot loop until I put the correct password. But now you see, if I run, it's going to, and I tell it admin, I give it a wrong password. It does not tell me access granted because this print statement is outside the loop. So it shouldn't give you this. It shouldn't be giving you this. Try give it a right password and then run the cell again, and until it becomes until it becomes okay, because it has to work. It definitely has to work. Yes. So now we are saying that while true, okay, greeting is equal to maybe input greet me. We want to put greeting, and here that if, I mean, now combining an if statement that greeting is equal to maybe by, okay, now I want you to break out of the loop. What am I doing here? So I run, why is it here? Until, let me first give this thing the correct thing, then I run this. So greet me, I say hi.
Joshua.
Yes.
This thing has refused.
Copy that into another environment, and you see what happens.
Okay.
Copy it into a new environment and it will run. So I just wanted to share this one last example, and then we call it a night. That if greeting is bye, so it keeps telling me that greet me, I say good morning, so but the moment I say bye, okay, we see that the loop basically stops. So we can even combine these loops with if statements. Yes,
it has worked in the new cell.
In the new cell.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know what was happening. Maybe there it was calling some variable that that was making it run continuously. So now we are saying that while true, put in this variable called greeting. Okay, but as soon as the greeting becomes bye, break out of the loop. And we have seen it that I run the cell, I'll say hi, run the cell, hello, run the cell, good evening, run the cell, good night, run, but it is continuously going to run until I give it a proper, until the greeting becomes bye, for it to break out of the loop. And immediately I say bye, it's no longer prompting me to put in more greetings. So that is basically how these loops work. Okay. If you are to forget anything, don't forget that a for loop runs a specified number of times that we know. A while loop will run until the condition becomes false. Okay. So do you have any questions, or can we call it a night?
Yeah, I have a question, Josh.
Yes.
What is the significance of this while true? I think I didn't get that very well. While true.
So while true, I'm just trying to show you that if a while loop will always run until the condition is what? Until the condition becomes false. Okay, so while true,
yeah, I understand
that I'm getting this greeting, just keep getting the greeting as long as that condition is true. But once the greeting becomes bye, you break out of that loop.
Okay, I understand.
Yes. So